Hello, dear viewers. Today, we embark on a deeply personal journey, a story of courage, compassion, and the remarkable power of organ transplantation. Join me as we follow the transformative path of individuals whose lives have been forever changed by the gift of a new beginning. What is transplant? A transplant is a surgical procedure where an organ or tissue is removed from one body, the donor, and placed into another body, the recipient. The recipient's body then uses the transplanted organ or tissue as if it were its own. There are two main types of transplants. Allograft. This is the most common type of transplant, where the donor and recipient are not genetically identical. The recipient's body will mount an immune response against the transplanted organ or tissue, so they need to take medication to suppress their immune system and prevent rejection. Examples of allografts include kidney transplants, heart transplants, and lung transplants. Autograft. In this type of transplant, the donor and recipient are the same person. Tissue is removed from one part of the body and transplanted to another. This type of transplant is less likely to be rejected by the body's immune system. Skin grafts, used to treat burns or for cosmetic surgery, are a common example of autografts. Transplants can be life-saving procedures for people with organ failure or other medical conditions. They can also improve the quality of life for people who need a functioning organ or tissue to live a normal life. Here's a breakdown of the transplant process. Evaluation. The recipient undergoes a thorough evaluation to determine if they are a good candidate for a transplant. This includes medical history, blood tests, and imaging studies. Waiting list. If the recipient is a good candidate, they are placed on a waiting list for a donor organ. The wait time can vary depending on the type of organ needed. Organ donation. When a donor organ becomes available, the recipient undergoes surgery to receive the transplant. Anti-rejection medication. After the transplant, the recipient needs to take medication to suppress their immune system and prevent rejection of the organ. Recovery. Recovery from a transplant can be a long process. The recipient will need to be closely monitored by their doctor and may need to take medication for the rest of their life. Organ donation is a critical part of the transplant process. Donated organs can come from deceased donors or living donors. If you are interested in becoming an organ donor, you can register your decision with your local organ donation organization. What does being a transplant mean? The term transplant can have two meanings, depending on the context. Medical transplant. In medicine, a transplant is a surgical procedure where an organ or tissue is removed from one body and placed into another body. The recipient's body then uses the transplanted organ or tissue as if it were its own. This can be a life-saving procedure for people with organ failure or other medical conditions. Transplanted person. In everyday language, transplant can also be used as a noun to refer to someone who has moved from one place to live in another, especially for a long period. They are essentially transplanted from their original location to a new environment. This usage often carries the implication that the person is adapting to a new culture or way of life. Here are some examples of how transplant is used in the second sense. She's a California transplant living in New York City. The new restaurant owner is a transplant from Mexico, bringing authentic recipes to the neighborhood. Understanding the context will help you determine which meaning of transplant is intended. Why do you transplant? The reason for transplanting depends on the context of the word. Here's a breakdown of the two main uses. Medical transplants. In medicine, transplants are performed for various reasons, with the primary goal of improving a person's health and quality of life. Here are some key reasons for medical transplants. Organ failure. When an organ like a kidney, heart, or liver fails, a transplant can provide a new, functioning organ that can save the recipient's life. Improve quality of life. Transplants can also be performed for organs or tissues that aren't necessarily failing but significantly impact a person's life. For example, a cornea transplant can restore vision in someone with a damaged cornea. Plant transplants. In gardening, transplanting refers to moving a plant from one location to another. There are several reasons for transplanting plants. Extend growing season. Transplanting seedlings started indoors allows them to be planted outdoors earlier than if sown directly in the ground, extending the growing season. Protect young plants. Seedlings are vulnerable to pests and harsh weather. Transplanting them to a protected environment allows them to grow stronger before being placed outdoors. Avoid germination problems. Certain seeds can be difficult to germinate directly in outdoor conditions. Transplanting seedlings grown from these seeds indoors increases the chances of successful germination. Improve plant placement. Transplanting allows you to position plants for optimal sunlight, spacing, and overall garden design. Revive root-bound plants. If a plant becomes root-bound in its pot, transplanting it to a larger container with fresh potting mix provides more space for root growth. By understanding the reasons for transplanting in each context, you can make informed decisions about organ donation, medical procedures, or your gardening practices. What happens in a transplant? A transplant is a complex medical procedure that involves several stages. Here's a breakdown of what typically happens in a transplant. Pre-transplant evaluation. Recipient assessment. The potential recipient undergoes a thorough evaluation to determine their suitability for the transplant. This includes a detailed medical history review, blood tests, imaging tests, X-rays, CT scans, etc., to assess the health of the recipient's body and the condition of the organs needing replacement. Matching. For allografts, organs from a different person, a compatible donor organ needs to be found. Blood type and tissue compatibility testing is crucial to minimize the risk of rejection. Waiting lists exist for donor organs, and the wait time can vary depending on the organ needed. Psychological evaluation. The recipient's mental and emotional well-being are also assessed. A transplant is a major life event, and the recipient needs to be prepared for the surgery, recovery, and lifelong medication regimen. The transplant surgery. Donor organ retrieval. In the case of deceased donors, surgery is performed to retrieve the organ under sterile conditions. Living donors, for organs like kidneys or parts of the liver, also undergo surgery to donate the organ. Recipient surgery. The recipient undergoes surgery to remove the failing organ, if applicable, and implant the donor organ in its place. The surgical team carefully connects the blood vessels and other structures to ensure proper blood flow and function of the new organ. Medication and monitoring. Following surgery, the recipient is closely monitored in the intensive care unit, ICU, for signs of infection or rejection. They will also begin taking immunosuppressive medications to suppress their immune system and prevent rejection of the new organ. Post-transplant care. Recovery. Recovery from a transplant can be a long process. The recipient will need to stay in the hospital for some time and then continue recovery at home. Physical therapy may be needed to regain strength and mobility. Immunosuppressive medication. The recipient will need to take medication for the rest of their life to suppress their immune system and prevent rejection. These medications can have side effects, so regular monitoring by doctors is essential. Lifestyle changes. Following a healthy lifestyle with a proper diet, exercise, and avoiding smoking and alcohol is crucial to optimize the health of the transplanted organ and the recipient's overall well-being. Potential complications. Rejection. The recipient's body may recognize the transplanted organ as foreign and attempt to attack it. Medications help prevent this, but rejection is a significant risk factor. There are different types of rejection, some treatable, while others may lead to organ failure. Infection. Due to the suppressed immune system, transplant recipients are more susceptible to infections. Careful hygiene and preventive measures are essential. Medication side effects. Immunosuppressive medications can have side effects like increased risk of infections, high blood pressure, or kidney problems. Regular monitoring and adjustments to the medication regimen may be needed. Transplants can be life-saving procedures, offering new opportunities for people with organ failure. However, it's a complex process with potential risks and requires a lifelong commitment to medication and healthy habits. Behind every transplant lies a story of hope in the face of adversity, of gratitude for a second chance at life, and of the profound bond between donors and recipients. Meet Sarah, whose heart beats stronger than ever thanks to the selfless gift of a donor. And Jake, whose new kidney has granted him the freedom to pursue his dreams with renewed vigor. But the journey of transplantation extends far beyond the operating room. It's a journey of resilience, supported by a dedicated team of healthcare professionals who guide and care for patients every step of the way. From the initial diagnosis to the nerve-wracking wait for a suitable donor to the life-changing moment of surgery, the transplant journey is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of community. Yet, amidst the triumphs, we cannot forget the heroes who make transplantation possible, the organ donors and their families, whose selfless generosity breathes life into others even in their darkest moments. So, my dear viewers, let us celebrate the journey of transplantation, a journey of hope, healing, and resilience. And let us honor the donors whose legacy lives on in the lives they've touched. Until next time, may we cherish each moment, embrace each other with compassion, and never lose sight of the miracles that surround us.